Welcome back to yet another week of Power Rankings. Week 9 is over, the trade deadline is over, and we are fully set on the second half of the season. The teams you have now, there will not be many changes to them at all, really. So from here on out, it's going to be all about football and what you have now. So let's get right into it. I'm on the Saints right now because they're at 32. They were once at 4 on these rankings, and now they've fallen all the way to 32. And it's just crazy because this team was 2-0. They had the best offense in the league through 2 weeks, and now they're 2-7. Carr comes back, and it doesn't matter. They lose to the Panthers. They traded longtime star Marshawn Lattimore to the Commanders. It's just looking like the Saints season is out of their control. Dennis Allen is now gone. They have Darren Rizzi taking over for them for the rest of the season. And from here on out for the Saints, it's about probably getting the best player you can in the draft. So they're at 32. The Patriots dropped their game to the Tennessee Titans this week, but I honestly liked what I saw from Drake May. He had a crazy play to Ramondre Stevenson to send the game to overtime, but then from there, they could not really recover from a really long Titans drive in overtime, and May threw a game-sealing pick. But overall, I'd like to see this improvement because this is what the Patriots need. They need this quarterback that's going to take them from being a bottom-of-the-league team to a team that's going to compete with a team like the Bills in the AFC East. So I'm liking what I'm seeing from May, but around him, not much going on, so they're at 31. For the first time in his career, Bryce Young went into victory formation. The first 3 wins of his career were on field goals, and he had a win where he also was the backup quarterback. But great game from Bryce Young. He was really connecting with receivers like Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker this game. And there might be some change in Carolina. They traded Jonathan Mingo at the deadline, but they didn't really sell much. And this Carolina team, I think, wants to compete over their last couple games in this last half of the season. So from here on out, it's about getting Bryce Young the reps he needs, and then you make the decision about, are you going to trust in his process, or are you going to go to a new quarterback in the 2025 draft? But for now, Carolina get their second win of the season, match their win total from last year, and they're up to 30. The Raiders are sitting at 29 this week, and this team did not sell off any massive pieces on deadline day. Of course, they got rid of Adams earlier in the season, but they kept pieces like Max Crosby. And this will be a long end of the season, but guys like Brock Bowers, who come up big for them, is going to get good reps to be a more experienced player because Bowers is in his rookie year. And then you have potential for like Aiden O'Connell, once he is fully healthy, to come back in here and get some more reps. But in their game against the Bengals, they just defensively were not there. They let Burrow walk all over them. They had 1 pick six, so that was their only highlight on defense. Offensively, they didn't do anything until garbage time. So the Raiders, 2-7, long second half of the season remaining for them, though. At 28, I have the New York Giants, and for the Giants, they lost this one to the Commanders. It was a close game, which is good sign if you want to see this Giants team develop. This team didn't sell much at the deadline. It's obvious that I think they're going to be drafting a quarterback in this upcoming draft because Daniel Jones threw his first touchdown in over 600 days at MetLife this past week. So, obviously, not much was going on over the last 2 years for that offense. Defensively, they did a good job of limiting Jaden Daniels from not having a great day, but it wasn't enough to get the win. The Giants' defense is their path to winning games, and it's going to need to be a bit better if they want to win. So I have them dropping a few spots. So you pick up the win over New England in a game where I thought Mason Rudolph was playing pretty solid, with Will Levis still kind of either injured or benched. We don't really know what's going on at this point. They said he was injured again. But this Titans team, they didn't sell as much as I thought they would either, because this is clearly a season that is pretty much over. They're 2-6, but I thought they would have sold a bit more than what they did. But for Tennessee from here on out, if they want to get back into the season, they need to win divisional games against teams like the Colts and Jaguars, as well as they need to just be better offensively, and I think Mason Rudolph does that for them. So right now, I have them at 27. I have the Jacksonville Jaguars dropping down a few spots to 26. And as for the Jaguars, they played a great second half against the Eagles this week. The first half, they were not there. They had a pick that went off Etienne's hands that set up a touchdown early. And for their team, they really looked like a team that could be good. They're in games against good teams. It's just, for example, this week in the first half, they went down by a lot early and almost made the comeback. If they don't put themselves in that position, they could have beat the Eagles this past week. So Jacksonville does have a lot of talent. They held on to Travis Etienne at the deadline and other pieces that maybe they would have sold off if they lost one or two more games. But for Jacksonville, they're in games against good teams. They just can't get over the line, and that's why they're at 2-7 right now, and that's why they're dropping 4 spots this week in my power rankings. In Week 8, Cleveland had a great offensive game against the Ravens. None of that happens this week against the Chargers. They are out of the game pretty early. Winston throws a couple interceptions, back to that mentality of touchdowns, interceptions, that 30-30 season he had with the Bucs. And for this Browns team, they were the team I'm shocked did not sell that much at the deadline. They held on to a couple pieces like Greg Newsome and Myles Garrett while selling only Zadarius Smith and Amari Cooper a few weeks ago. But for Cleveland, there's going to be obvious change. This is probably the team that is most quarterback desperate because Watson wasn't doing anything and there's not much in the fold that fixes that quarterback problem. So for them, it's about getting that future quarterback piece in the upcoming offseason. But for the rest of the season, they'll try to be competitive like how they were against the Ravens. Tua came back. This Dolphins offense has rejuvenated itself. It's scoring points, which it did not do while Tua was gone. The problem is they're allowing too many points. They lose 28-27 in a game against the Cardinals, first game back for Tua. And this week they drop it on a 61-yard win field goal for the Bills. And the Dolphins are now 2-6. I think this offense has figured itself out. That's kind of the Dolphins' identity the last 2 years as they made the playoffs. But now the defense needs to figure it out if the Dolphins want to save this season. They're not completely out of it yet. They're 2-6, and this is a team that can definitely get on a roll and get back into it. But for the Dolphins, picking it up as soon as possible is key, and it starts with defensive change. So right now they're at 24. A very unfortunate week for Dallas as they lose Prescott for 4 weeks. He heads to IR. And they'll roll with Cooper Rush in the most important stretch of their season. They are 3-5, and the NFC East is a long shot at this point. They're 4 games behind the Commanders, and at this point, the playoffs are seeming to be. They're 3 games out of a spot at this point. But for the Cowboys, they just have not looked good on offense, and their offensive numbers are really carried by garbage time plays to whether it be CeeDee Lamb, because he scored multiple touchdowns in multiple games this season when it was already over. And that's Dallas's problem. They seem like they're just not offensively good enough when it matters. So right now they're at 23. I have belief in the New York Jets again. That was a great game from them against the Texans on Thursday night, where they kind of eliminated some of my concerns with them. I thought their offense was just confused. And for the first time, they looked like a good offense in that second half. Davante Adams gets his first touchdown as a Jet. Garrett Wilson has probably the craziest catch of the decade to this point. And the Jets defensively shut down C.J. Stroud. Stroud did not complete many passes against this Jets team. And it was just a great team win for the Jets, one that they needed really badly after dropping 5 in a row. They're 3-6 now. They have an important stretch before their bye against the Cardinals and Colts. 2 games that they can, if they win, they go into their bye back in this season. So big games coming up. Rodgers is going to need to come up big, but there is hope in New York, and that's why I've moved them up to 22. Indianapolis made the quarterback change from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco, and it seems like it did not work. They had their worst offensive game of the season. They did not score a touchdown offensively. Their only touchdown came off a scoop and score. So that's concerning. It was a game that the Colts, that if they win, they potentially make more moves at the deadline. But now they're 4-5. They're sitting a game out of a playoff spot behind the Broncos. And Colts are playing the Bills and then the Jets, 2 games where I don't know if they can beat the Bills, but that Jets game is going to be huge. And yeah, important stretch. Joe Flacco is going to need to be that guy. And kind of the defense is going to need to keep carrying this team if they want to win. The Denver Broncos got embarrassed against the Ravens this week. This defense that was the main reason Denver was winning games early on just got exposed. They allowed 41 points. And the offense is just not good enough to keep up with it. The only touchdown they got was a Bo Nix receiving touchdown. And it kind of shows that this Broncos 5-4 run that they've had to start the year might not be legit. And there is an important stretch for them because they're currently the 7th seed in the AFC, and they're going to need to win 4 or 5 out of their last half of the season if they want to make the postseason. So Denver, hope, but I don't really see it going well for them based on what happened this week against Baltimore. Seattle is a team that if they want to get into the playoffs, their path is their division. The NFC West is extremely weak this year. And what a better way to not stride towards the playoffs than losing to the Rams, a divisional opponent. They lose in overtime after the Rams just basically walked over them in the extra time. Stafford kind of had no problem picking them apart on that winning drive. And it's just not scoring when they need to and making mistakes that has held the Seahawks back. This team started off 3-0, and they've been 1-5 since. They now have a losing record. And going into their bye week, lots of questions. When is DK going to come back? Because he's a big piece of their team. And Seattle, they're going to need to win lots of games down the stretch to make the playoffs, but most importantly, those division games. This part of the season for Tampa has just been a shame. They lose Evans and Godwin. Evans short-term, Godwin out for the year. And it just seemed like Cade Otton's been their only option on offense. He's playing out of his mind right now. But they keep playing these great teams, and they just fall short. They just fall short to the Chiefs in overtime this week after what I thought was a great game from them overall. They've dealt the Lions their only loss this year. So this is obviously a Bucs team that knows what they're doing. They're a great football team. It's just, can they piece it together with limited weapons? That's why I have them this low at 18, considering they have a 4-5 record so far. The LA Rams are beginning to figure it out because Kupp and Nacua and all these guys are starting to come back, and they're getting these huge wins. They beat the Vikings last week. They beat the Seahawks this week. They're back at 500. And as I said with the Seahawks before, the NFC West is going to come down to those divisional games. The next time the Rams play the Cardinals is going to probably be the Rams' biggest game of the season, as well as when they play the 49ers, because I think those are the 3 teams that really have a shot at winning this division. And it's going to need to get increased production from Puka Nacua. He leaves early with a ejection. Can't have that happening in the big games, but they're able to pull it out. And I'm liking what I'm seeing from Sean McVay's Rams team to this point. So they're at number 17. I had a feeling that Hail Mary loss to the Commanders in Week 8 was going to have a bad effect on the Bears' season. And here they are. They drop a game 29-9 to the Cardinals. They did not score a touchdown. And that's pretty concerning considering the Bears' defense is usually great, but they didn't seem as great as they were in past games. I really do think that Hail Mary might have broke this team. I don't know where the Bears go from here. They're last place in the division where it's an uphill battle against 3 very good football teams. So from here on out, I don't really know what to think of the Bears. They're going to need to prove what they are to me over the next few weeks, but for now, they're at 16. I thought the Cincinnati Bengals might have done more at the deadline, considering their defense has been lackluster for most of the season. And they didn't make any moves other than adding Khalil Herbert to back up Chase Brown. But as for their game this week, Joe Burrow is an amazing player. He throws for 5 touchdowns again. The team was just clicking. Gesicki had 2 touchdowns. Yossi Voss had a touchdown. And everybody was getting involved in what was a big win over the Raiders. And that's what you need to see. This Bengals team is 4-5. I do have a very good belief that they'll make the playoffs, and it starts with winning this Thursday night game against the Ravens. If you win that game, you're 5-5, and your final 7 games of the year, you just have to have a winning record, and you'll probably get in. So for now, Cincinnati at number 15. LA got the dub over the Browns this week, and the Chargers are interesting. They're 5-3 right now. They're the 6th seed in the AFC at this point, and I think this team has what it takes to get into the playoffs. It's just if they're going to take the initiative to do it, and I think they will. They have the games in their division that I believe they'll win. I believe they'll beat teams like the Broncos again. I believe they'll beat teams like the Raiders again, and it's just right there in front of them for this team that is getting great play from J.K. Dobbins. They're getting better play from Herbert this year than last year for sure. And that's important to their formula to winning games. And they're just a team that gets it done. So shout out to the Chargers. They're at number 14. The San Francisco 49ers sit at 13. They were on bye this past week, but they got the result of a Rams and Cardinals win, which means they do fall to 3rd in the division. But I don't think that's really important for them so far, because the 49ers are getting Christian McCaffrey back this week. It's basically like a trade deadline move. They're getting the guy halfway through the year at 4-4, where this team has been unconvincing in a division that, talent-wise, they should run away with. And I think McCaffrey is the formula to this 49ers team getting back to what it was last year, and I think they'll start winning games. But for right now, I have them at 13. The Arizona Cardinals season seemed like it was starting to go very downhill a few weeks ago, but they've strung together a bunch of wins in a row here. They're over 500 and leading the NFC West. They are 5-4 now, and they get big plays. They had a big play at the end of the first half from Amari DiMercado where he scored a touchdown late with 10 seconds to go. That was a big part of them winning. Defensively, they looked amazing against a Bears offense that has looked good in multiple games this season. And the Cardinals are just getting it done right now. They have the Jets upcoming this week. And if you win that game, 6-4 is looking very, very good for the Arizona Cardinals. It's not what I would have thought from them at this point in the season. So Arizona is getting great play right now, and that's why they're up at 12. The Atlanta Falcons get another win. They're up to 6-3 on the year, and it seems like this is their division to lose at this point, with the Saints and Panthers being way out of it and the Buccaneers suffering injury issues. It seems like Atlanta's going to get back to the playoffs. It just matters about what seed they are, and I think this Atlanta team is going to keep winning games because they're getting incredible play out of Kirk Cousins, their big offseason acquisition, who's really changed the culture in Atlanta for this team. So shout out to the Falcons, just outside the top 10 at 11. The Houston Texans are at number 10. They do drop this week to the New York Jets, and their offense was just not good enough in this one. This offense has lost Stephon Diggs for the year. They didn't have Nico Collins last week. It seems like he'll be returning this week, which is huge. He was by far the best receiver in football before he got hurt. And yeah, it's just about execution for the Texans, where their defense seems like it executes almost every game to give the offense a shot to win. It's more about offensive execution through the pass game. Joe Mixon, when he plays, is very reliable. And this Texans team has the tools to win games. So that's why I have them still in the top 10 at number 10. Pittsburgh was on bye this past week, but they get a result that doesn't go in their favor. The Ravens won. So it's still a big chase for this division, and the Steelers got Mike Williams at the deadline. That's a huge receiver add for them. that's going to help give Russell Wilson pieces for him to succeed from here on out. And I think this defense is good enough for this team to be a contender down the stretch. I've kept them at 9 because I believe that's a great spot for them. But I wouldn't be shocked for them to go even higher if they beat teams like the Bengals or the Ravens in those divisional games coming up. Green Bay loses to their divisional opponent, the Detroit Lions, this week, 24-14. And it was just not enough from their offense. Jordan Love throws a pick six that cost them almost the game late in the first half. And Josh Jacobs was the only person really on that offense doing things in this game. The pass game was just inefficient. Jordan Love seemed like he was still hurt. And overall, it's out there for them to win. So Green Bay, success in the past, not this week. They go into their bye at 6-3. Minnesota gets back to their winning ways. They had a quick little moment there where I was wondering what was going on because they lost 2 in a row, but they shut me up, basically, because their defense came ready to play on Sunday night against the Colts, not allowing a single offensive touchdown. And Darnold just made the big plays at the big moments. There's turnover concerns, but Darnold knows when to make the big plays, and that is a big plus for this Vikings team that is now 6-2. They are the top team in the NFC, not leading a division. And once they get a second crack at the Lions, that's a game where the Vikings know they can take advantage. So for now, I have the Vikings at number 7, up 3 from 10. The Eagles get the win over the Jaguars. I have them at number 6 this week. And this game was a bit concerning in the second half. They almost blew a huge lead, but this team is explosive. Seems like they dodged the bullet with the A.J. Brown injury. Hopefully he can get back in the lineup for them next week after he left this week early with an injury. Saquon had a crazy backwards hurdle highlight that was nuts. That's the best way to explain it. And for the Eagles, they just got to keep winning games. They have that big matchup with the Commanders next Thursday night for the division lead. And if they win that game, the Eagles are living up to the expectations that many had for them preseason. So right now they're at 6. Washington Commanders are a very good football team, and they continue to prove it. They win again. They're 7-2, and Dan Quinn has really changed the culture there. Outside of the offense, which I'll get to in a second, the defense has just been outstanding in big moments. They add Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints at the deadline, which is going to help them in that secondary a ton. Offensively, Jaden Daniels is that guy. McLaurin continues to make big catches. And for the Commanders, it's just about maintaining this lead. I just said it for the Eagles. That game next Thursday night is massive. And if the Commanders win that game, they're going to really prove to everybody that this Washington team can do it this year. This Washington team can win the Super Bowl, and I believe that they very much can. So that's why they're in my top 5 at number 5. Baltimore's offense exploded this week against a defense that was supposedly really, really good. They score 41. Derrick Henry runs over them. Lamar Jackson makes big plays. And the Ravens got back to the football that we're used to seeing from them after a little scare against the Browns. And this team did not add much. They added Deontay Johnson in recent weeks, and they had Tre'Davious White. And there's just good-looking future for this Ravens team if they can win the AFC North. And the AFC North is right there in front of them. They just have to win their head-to-head games against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's looking great for Baltimore. They're at number 4. Buffalo Bills sit at number 3. I moved them up 1 spot, and they got it done against a divisional opponent. The Miami Dolphins are much better than their record actually shows, and the Bills played a good football game. Josh Allen continues to look like an MVP candidate this year, and the defense made big stops when it mattered, but they just needed to be a bit better. They definitely could have added something at the deadline. I was shocked they did not, But this is a team that's going to need to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs. If they could do it this year, they have a very good shot to win the Super Bowl if they can get past Kansas City in the playoffs. And they have that game upcoming against the Chiefs to see a little preview of if they can. So for right now, Buffalo at 3. I have the Kansas City Chiefs at number 2. And many say, how come they're not number 1? They're undefeated and they haven't lost since last December. Because they did not look convincing for multiple weeks, and the first time they looked convincing was this past Monday night. DeAndre Hopkins is possibly the best acquisition so far out of those receiver trades that have happened, because it was instant results for that duo. They scored 2 big touchdowns. Kareem Hunt, that midseason acquisition to cover for the Pacheco injury, he's playing the best football he's played possibly in his career. The defense comes up with big stops against Baker Mayfield in this game, and there's just a lot going right for Kansas City right now. They need to get a bit more battle tested before we see, is this Kansas City team ready to three-peat? Because their 8-0 record, I'm not sure about that being a real representation of this team, but so far they're looking great, and that's why they're at 2. I continue to have this team at number 1. I'm talking about the Detroit Lions. They get another big divisional win against the Green Bay Packers, where they got the pick 6, and St. Brown had a big touchdown early. They got the run game going, and what was a rainy game, and the team just continues to execute. That is the big thing about the Detroit Lions. They might not be as star-studded as possibly the Chiefs. They don't have those amazing players. I mean, you have St. Brown and Goff, but this team just executes really well, and that's what it takes to win a championship. And the Lions are looking like the best team out there to do it right now, and that's why I have them at 1. And that's going to do it for this week's Power Rankings. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I will see you after Week 10 for next week's Power Rankings.